The Toronto Blue Jays have some massive decisions to make because as of right now, they're in serious trouble after dropping last night's game against the Boston Red Sox 7-3 in the series opener. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of 3 Up, 3 Down. What's up, everybody? Welcome into 3 Up, 3 Down. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis. Today we're going to be talking about the Toronto Blue Jays yet again and just the never-ending cycle of disappointment that they've been putting fans through this season. Now, yesterday they had a great opportunity against Nick Pivetta and the Boston Red Sox to get back to 500 for the first time since April when they were 15-15. Since May, sorry. Now, they didn't do that. They failed to do that. They lost 7-3. Tyler O'Neill hit 2 home runs. Rafi Devers hit a home run. And the Boston Red Sox were dog walking the Toronto Blue Jays last night. That's what ended up happening. It was like an owner taking their dog out for a walk, and the dog had no say in what was going on. That's what the Blue Jays were last night. And just another terrible excuse of a baseball game. It was an awful lineup that was put out by manager John Schneider yet again. So let's get into the first screenshot that I want to touch on here. Forget the schedule. Forget that the team is still unreliable offensively. The most pressing concern right now, which is saying something, is how they are going to close out games they may find themselves leading. The team is currently without its top 3 relievers from last season, Jordan Romano, Jimmy Garcia, both on the 15-day injured list, and Eric Swanson, so off form that he had to be demoted to AAA. So what to do now, John Schneider? That's a good question because I don't know if John Schneider has that answer for you, that Toronto Sun reporter who wrote that article. Shout out to him. But the Blue Jays are searching for answers right now, and they have been for the majority of the season, and we've yet to really see any sort of turnaround for them. They've had stretches where they've won 7 out of 10 games, but it hasn't been enough to get them back to that elusive 500 mark, which they've been chasing for the majority of the season. And that was not the expectation coming into the year. They were not supposed to be a 500 team middling with mediocrity. They were supposed to be a playoff team. They were supposed to be someone that was leading the wild card race or even making a run at the division. Now that is totally out of the question because the Yankees are the best team in baseball, and they're followed pretty closely by the Baltimore Orioles, who you could argue are the second best team in baseball, if not the third best team in baseball. So there's a lot of uphill climbing left to do for the Blue Jays to get back to where they need to be. But at this point, they have some massive decisions to make when it comes to personnel, when it comes to coaching. They just don't have what it takes to be one of the elite teams in Major League Baseball. I've come to that conclusion. I came to it about a month ago with this team, and I don't see it getting any better. Now, the lineup that they put out there yesterday didn't include Spencer Horwitz, who they called up and who had been playing really well for them. It didn't include Addison Barger, who had a couple of hits in the ball game the night before. So What exactly is the goal here for the Blue Jays? Is it to justify the contracts that they gave out to George Springer and Kevin Kiermaier by putting them in the lineup every day? Kiermaier has been one of the worst players in baseball this season, and he was awful defensively last night. He made a couple of miscues that cost the Blue Jays some runs. There was a ball hit up the middle, which he fumbled. He would have had a play at home had he come up with that cleanly. And then there was another one. There was a runner on third, medium depth fly ball, probably would have scored because it was Jarren Duran, but it became academic at that point because Kiermaier didn't see it, and he had to backpedal and couldn't step into the ball and throw it to home. So there were some miscues last night from Kiermaier. There was another one where he was hitting. It was a 2-0 count, and he grounds into a double play, just killing any sort of momentum that the Blue Jays could have picked up there. He's been a black hole offensively. He hasn't been as good defensively as he has been in the past. And what's more baffling about bringing him back is that the Blue Jays have Dalton Varsho on their roster, who you could argue is not only the best defensive outfielder in baseball, he's the best defender in baseball. That's how elite he is in the outfield, but he's getting wasted playing in left field every day because Kevin Kiermaier needs to be in the lineup because he signed a $10 million deal in the offseason with the Jays. So I don't understand what the priority here is for the team. Are they trying to win, or are they trying to justify those contracts? Because if you're trying to win, Spencer Horwitz and Addison Barger are in the lineup yesterday, and George Springer and Kevin Kiermaier are not. You got to find places for the guys that are performing with the bat, and that's how you're going to have success, especially when you're struggling offensively. I'll use the Houston Astros as an example. They just designated for assignment Jose Abreu, guy who was owed $30 million more. They said, enough is enough. It hasn't worked out for you here in Houston. Hope you find another home, but your home is no longer here in Texas. That's what the Houston Astros did. And what are the Houston Astros? They're one of the great dynasties that we've seen in the 2000s. That's how good they've been in the past decade. And they had to cut ties from a former MVP. They had to cut ties from someone who played a big role on many teams that he's been a part of. And I'm sure that wasn't an easy decision to make, but when you're not cutting it, it's a get-it-done league. It's not, oh yeah, we paid you, so you got to stay in the lineup until you figure it out. The Jays are not in the position to be making decisions based off of those metrics right there. So if Springer and Kiermaier are not cutting it, they have to be out of the lineup. And let's take a look at George Springer's stats right here. That's Tim Meza. I'm going to touch on that a little bit later. This is George Springer right here. He's got a 0 WAR exactly, so he's been a replacement level player. He's batting 197 with an OPS of 578. And keep in mind, he was the leadoff hitter for the majority of the season before the Jays stubbornly decided to put him in the bottom half of the order. It was about time that happened, but he's just not doing anything up there. The 8 stolen bases are nice, but a 289 slugging percentage, a 289 on base percentage, that's just not going to cut it. And he's been a really good player over the course of his career, but right now he's no longer George Springer that he was when he came over from the Houston Astros. He's no longer the former World Series MVP. He's a guy who is over the hill and just can't cut it on a major league diamond anymore, and that's okay. But you're going to have to live with that contract if you're the Jays. And the way of doing that is not by putting this guy in the lineup every day who's putting up a 68 OPS plus. I'm sure he's a great clubhouse guy. He's been a great leader on this team for the past couple of seasons, but he's just not getting it done on the field anymore. You are a few games back now of a wild card spot. You're not playing good baseball. You're 2 games under 500. You need to put the best possible lineup on the field. And it's going to get even harder, like that article touched on over there, because we see Jimmy Garcia on the 15-day IL with elbow soreness, right elbow ulnar neuritis. I don't even know what that is, but it doesn't sound good. So Jimmy Garcia has been the most reliable reliever on this team this season, and now he's not in the lineup. So where do you replace him? Where do you go from there? If you're the Jays, that's going to be a big question that needs some answering. And they could look internally. They could look at Tim Meza, but he hasn't been good either. Look at those numbers. A 6.04 ERA with a 1.7 whip. His whip is higher than his ERA was last season. So you have a lot of guys that are underperforming at a criminal level in this Blue Jays lineup, and they got to figure something out because they are in serious trouble. But that'll wrap it up for this video. Thank you guys for making it this far. And if you didn't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and make sure to comment your thoughts on the Blue Jays and what you've seen from them this season. But also, big shout out to Baseball Town for presenting this podcast to you. Would not be possible without them. So shout out to Baseball Town. Check out the website, baseballtown.ca. Get all the equipment that you need to get ready for the season. And we will see you tomorrow for another daily upload.